Over the years, marketers have been analyzing the different generations, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and recently we have seen there's a red thread among all of them: speed. They all want everything to happen now. My name is Francisco Serrano, and I am the Chief Speed Officer at 1-to-1 and the host of the Now Gen podcast. Join me. Each episode, we talk about what's happening with brands, see how brand professionals across different industries cope with this fast-changing market, and live up to the expectation of this now generation. Welcome.
This episode is brought to you by 1-to-1, the fastest day-to-day design and content studio. For more than 17 years, 1-to-1 has been their premier partner for many Fortune 500 companies, proving that tight deadlines shouldn't be a hassle.
Hello, and welcome to the Now Gen podcast. Today, I am very excited because we have a very interesting topic we're going to go today on. And the topic is the new power. Being Latino is the now trend. Isn't that exciting? Amigos, excited today. In this episode, we have a very special guest that knows all the insides and outsides of this market. Stacie de Armas. She is the Senior Vice President of Diverse Insight and Initiatives at Nielsen. Stacie is one of Latina Style Magazine's top Latina. For more than 20 years, she has experience with multicultural media planning, research and analytics, public affairs, and diverse consumer insights. So welcome, Stacie. Happy to have you today.
Gracias, Francisco. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
We were just warming up the call, and we were just exciting and just jumping into all the themes. But before we go into all the details, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're coming from and what got you where you're at today?
Sure. So first and foremost, I guess I should start with saying I'm a Latina, I'm Cubana, and I'm a mom. That's who I am. I also, I'm a daughter, I'm an aunt, but when I'm not being all of those things, professionally, I work at Nielsen. And at Nielsen, I focus on diverse communities and insights, and I focus on helping brands better understand who diverse consumers are, where they can be reached, and the passion points of diverse consumers so that brands can better not just reach us with marketing messages, but really meet us where we're at today. It's a really interesting career arc because I didn't know that a job like to be honest with you, back when I was in college, like something this sort of specific in DEI, but really sort of in diverse consumers and insights didn't really exist. So I couldn't have gone to school for that because it didn't really exist. I studied marketing and advertising. And as my journey started, I found myself just naturally drawn to Latino segments. It just felt very natural for me. And I've talked before about how I worked at a bank, and at the bank, I naturally was drawn to working with Latino consumers. I was Pomona, California. And even though at the time it's a very, Latino area, but at the bank, there was nobody else, maybe one other person that spoke Spanish. So naturally, I just started serving the consumers that came in that, needed either a, better understanding of how the U.S. financial system works, how to get an account or how to, do different processes. We didn't have materials at the time that were really sort of beautifully translated, if you will. There was some basic items. And so I leaned into my community and offered support there. And so I found this sort of as you know about the culture, Francisco, I found like family in doing this work. And I was in college really working at a bank, right? I didn't see it at that time as a career or a journey. It just felt really comfortable for me. And as my career progressed and I went to an ad agency, I kind of found myself in the same way, focusing on the accounts and the work that was being activated among Latino communities on Spanish language radio or Spanish language television. and I again gravitated there. I was like, oh, I love this place, and so that's just kind of how my career really started around focusing on diverse consumers. It started with Latino communities specifically. And if I, as far back as I trace it, Francisco, I can always kind of see that, this draw to better resourcing the community. And I thankfully, Nielsen has given me the chance to sort of carry that on into the work that I do today. And, today I have the privilege of being able to share all that is special about our community, about Black communities, about AA and HPI communities, LGBTQ plus communities, really focusing on diverse consumers and helping brands understand what is that it factor about us, our power, and how to connect.
And I see everybody can see your passion for the topic. What triggers that? What drives you?
It's an interesting question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that way. Probably a bit of probably maybe the inequity that I've seen like in my own family, right? And what I mean by that, like I'm white, totally white passing, right? I mean it's a Cubano thing. I know that, and so I've had this privilege in my life of being in rooms and in conversations where where I know that perhaps some of my darker skinned brothers and sisters like couldn't be in. And so I think in being exposed to perhaps conversations and ideas that others have about the Latino community has driven me to advocate for us in seeing my one of the things that's constantly frustrated me, it doesn't happen so much anymore, but my grandparents, as an example, obviously, they live in Miami now. So you don't need English in Miami. It's not a problem. But their English isn't very great. And that's okay. They're, a beautiful Spanish speakers and coming over from Cuba much later in their lives. But I remember as a girl living here in Alhambra, California, and going places with my grandparents, and my grandparents sort of, trying to figure something out or maybe struggling through a phrase, and people just sort of elevating their voices, just yelling louder. And I remember thinking like, that's not going to help that's not, and just sort of visually seeing, like being present around the inequity in my community and seeing it in my own family has driven me to advocate for better. And so, perhaps that's it. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it, Francisco. It's a good question. I think that drives me though, is we all see inequity around us, constantly. And in particular, if you're from, a minority community, it's just always present. And I think because I present the way I do, I've had other opportunities, and I want everyone to have those. So I've tried to build that into my work in the way that I can, which is talking about our power, our strength, our presence, and our value.
Yes, and I can relate to that, Stacie, because I can see that power you say you have within you, and you see it from your background. I have the same Mexican, and I'm a pastor here too. But when it gets down to it, you go to the bank and you don't get a credit card. And when you go to and then you have all these different steps you need to go through. And it's difficult because it's a process of self-worth, of saying, yes, I can do it. And it's just struggling. And that has helped you, that power has helped you to shine above everybody. And has led you to be a top Latina, one of the top Latina executives. What does it feel to belong to that list, Stacie?
I mean, it's such an honor. And sometimes, one of the other things, it's funny, I was just writing about this yesterday in this article. We also carry this really heavy imposter syndrome. I know I do. I feel like, perhaps I haven't done enough, or I'm not good enough, or and so to be honored in that way by my peers is, it's remarkable. It makes me, sort of take pause and think like, I am maybe in some small way making a difference or encouraging others to make a difference. I don't know any privilege I've had like that, any kind of recognition. I certainly have not done that alone. And I don't just mean in my life with my grandparents and my parents and my kids and all the people that support me, but I mean also, the people I've worked with that have taught me, mentored me, given me runway. Nielsen in particular, and I don't just say this because I work there, this is the absolute truth, has given me the runway to explore the topics that are meaningful to the industry around inclusion and diversity. Nielsen has said, go and do this work, find the story, share it, make a difference for diverse communities. And it's a privilege. So the position, being honored by Latina Style or by Imagen Foundations, they also honored for influential Latinos in entertainment. I didn't do that by myself. That's the privilege that I have had of taking data and resources that I've had and making something out of those. So I recognize that those honors aren't mine alone. They are, they're sort of like a team of people that enable me to do anything, to do the work that gets a light shown on it. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my team at Nielsen. I'm grateful for my family, my parents, who are incredible supporters. As a single mom, I travel a lot for business. I have a lot of responsibilities, and I need a lot of help. And so my parents are grateful every time they pick up my daughter from school, or make sure that there's dinner for my son, or come over and do the dishes, which my mom did last night. Which is so helpful. It enables me to finish that email, be at that business meeting, be focused on the conversation around elevating Latinos. And so I think, one of the things that we often, need to do, people in general, to do a better job of is being grateful for the teams of people, loved ones and otherwise, who allow us, to elevate.
And going back a little bit into what in the conversation we had offline about brands and the business, and tell us about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion nowadays for companies and brands.
Well, actually, I think the conversation we were just having ties in perfectly, right? Because some of those components that I talked about are cultural components. That's not to say that everyone doesn't have, strong family ties and strong relationships, but there is research and science behind the fact that Latinos are a collectivist culture. So we, when one rises, we all rise. And so there is a very different, some cultural tenets and pillars that are different from that we see in other cultures. And so the more I can help brands understand what those are, and those just naturally came out, Francisco, in our conversation about my life and what I did, right? That was just unplanned. But the more I can help brands understand those components and how our community values them, and where they, where they come from, and how brands can tap into them, the more brands can not just, again, reach us, or because this isn't just about selling products, it's about meeting Latinos or diverse consumers where they are at. One of the things I've been doing a lot of work on is content. So, media and entertainment content, and helping brands understand, not, in the past or for many years, brands have bought placement, right? They're advertising within content that had the highest ratings, and maybe it's rating or had significant ratings among Hispanics or Spanish-speaking Hispanics, or ratings just in general. Like they want the eyeballs, so they're trying to evaluate where's the best place to place their media, where they can get a lot of eyes, and perhaps that leads to sales. But what I'm trying to help brands understand is that it's not just placing within content. Let's evaluate, let's deconstruct that content and understand the attributes of content that are most meaningful, in this case, to Latino audiences, right? What is there, think of it this way, is there an amplified factor, an amplified value of being in content that is more meaningful, right? So we already know how many eyes are watching it. We know what the rating is, but is there sort of like a 2x factor if that, which isn't measured in just straight ratings number, right? This I'm talking about sort of, like relevance, right? Can we help brands understand that the attributes or the quality of a piece of content can amplify their presence or the reception of their presence within a piece of content? It's super interesting. And so now we're taking a look, for example, like at content and saying, is there good representation of, are Latinos represented in the content on screen, behind the camera? What are the attributes of that content? And then a brand can look at content through a different lens and say, this is a good environment for my brand. I want to be here, not just because it has great ratings, but because it has that extra something, right? Whatever that is, that has that extra something that is going to resonate more deeply and more authentically with Latinos. So that's what we're working on.
Yeah, and I have seen, I don't know if you have too, but the pandemic accelerated this, and they suddenly start to pop up new positions for e-com or Amazon specialists for that, and people just like a specialist and making sure that you have the right likes, senior or junior. And then I've started to see within the companies more and more diversity and inclusion.
Oh yeah.
And Latino. Do you see that happening also across global corporations?
Sure. Yeah. So switching gears from like content, media, and audience to thinking about the makeup of companies, right? Who are inside the companies making the decisions? DE&I has just exploded. As I mentioned, when I first started in doing this kind of work, didn't really have a roadmap or even really a name at the time. Of course, that's changed a lot in the past, 15 years, but really, Francisco, it's changed a lot since the summer of 2020.
Yes.
The summer of 2020 accelerated DE&I in a way, all the events of summer 2020, not the least of which is the horrific murder of George Floyd, but it accelerated DE&I and the importance of cultural identity for everyone, right? Of course, for the Black community, but also for Latino communities, for Native American communities, the trauma and pain that the Asian American community suffered as a result of, COVID and the horrific attacks that are still going on. 2020 brought this new light on DE&I and the importance of that. So to your point, yes, companies have shifted gears significantly and are putting a focus on ensuring that they don't just have good like talent acquisition plans and development plans and good BRGs for Latinos and for, other identity groups, but are really putting that work into action by, which is kind of, I think, the work that I do, which is making sure that we don't just, talk the talk, but we actually walk the talk.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, because executives are well known to have a very well and seasoned selling speech in a meeting, and they can go through about putting their point of view versus the one against you and the other side of the table. But data is important, right? Data makes an important role play in the whole discussion, because it's not just
an opinion. Yeah, it's not subjective.
Latinos are important. No, look at this. This is the reaction. This is the and is that something that you are looking to deliver to the brands?
Absolutely, and we do that regularly. We just released early in September our annual Nielsen Hispanic report. And again, in this report, and there's a series of these, we deliver them every year, it highlights the value of the community, but in data, in numbers, right? So it's easy for people to sit around and say the Latino community is growing. But when you back it up with data and you say, it's not only growing, the community contributed more than 50% of the population growth of the United States in the past 10 years alone.
Wow.
We're only 20% of the population of the US, but we contributed more than 50% of the growth. Numbers like that, if you're a brand, whether you believe in diverse marketing or Latino communities or not, if you're sitting back and you're saying, where's the future of my brand? Where do I need to invest? What's the next big segment? If you're not already doing, Latino marketing, first of all, goodness help you, but hopefully you are. And so then what this will help you do is put the numbers behind how much you should be investing. It's one thing to be investing 2 to 5% of your budget into Latino, community communication or marketing. But when you look at this data that we put forward, like we just did in our report in early September, it's undeniable that you need to continue to invest or invest more. And in particular, in this community, there are a lot of diverse communities in the United States. They all have tremendous value, but if you look at the growth potential, the past growth, the economic contributors for the United States, if you look at workforce contribution, there is no doubt that the Latino community is the driver, not only of all of those, but also the driver of the evolution of American culture.
Yeah, and it's not, and I have seen this in big corporations and global corporations, especially in the US and in Europe, they don't just park the responsibility on a person. They do it from within the culture itself, because nadie da lo que no tiene. Nobody gives what it doesn't have within. So how can you be a diverse or
Got to have people inside.
You need to have somebody that creates that culture within. So I've seen that they are, like you say, they're walking the walk and making sure that it's happening, right? It's not just a dream that we're talking about.
It also changes the work, Francisco, right? Like if you have a good population, a solid population of diverse people within a company, in this case, Latinos working within Nielsen, let's say, it shapes the work that you end up doing, right? So it's not just about bringing in the diverse population, a diverse workforce. First of all, the workforce today and the youth are the most diverse generation yet. So that's the way that's going to be. But bringing in diverse workforces means you have a better work product, because you're looking at data, at product development, everything from a different angle, because you have these people with this varied experience and varied life experience. So having diverse teams isn't just about checking a box. It's about your downstream work product. How good is that? How inclusive is that product? What are we thinking through when we're delivering something to market, whether it's a potato chip or a software product? Having diverse people on your team means your downstream product is just better, because you're looking at it more thoroughly through more lenses.
I know, and it's important to take that into consideration. And as we were talking offline about the now generation, and what the meaning of that is, I wanted to ask a question for you. Do you feel that this Latino audience has this instant gratification trend following the market, or no?
That's a good question. When we were talking offline, you were talking about your daughter, and I was thinking about my kids. I have an 18-year-old who I just dropped off at college, and a 16-year-old who's a junior in high school. And I was thinking about this now, generation and sort of instant gratification. Do I think Latinos have that? I think it's varied. So first of all, if I had to just give one answer, I would say yes. And I believe that because younger generations are more diverse ever, and they're more Latino than ever, certainly in the United States. And so, pop culture and trends that we're seeing today, I would argue, are largely driven by Latino youth, because Latino youth make up, a larger concentration of youth. So yes. But I also think that it's not a one, a single lensed answer or one faceted answer, because while there is an instant gratification, meaning you really have one shot to do it and do it right, what doing it right means looks different for Latino communities, right? There are components such as cultural relevance that we've been talking about. There are attributes of culture that, for example, if we're talking about like a TikTok video, or, you have a couple of seconds to grab someone's attention, there would need to be attributes of creative, and whether it's TikTok or a brand message that meet those unique and nuanced needs and that Latino youth have. So yes, there is still, like rapidez, like quick, you got to move quick, and there's quickness in wanting to receive messages and needing a message to hit. But the components that make that up, the ingredients of that, I would argue look a little bit different for Latino youth, who are reaching back to culture more than any generation prior. I can tell you that certainly even with my kids are more connected to culture than I was at their age. And it's an identity that Latino youth don't just want to own, they do own it with such strength. And so those components need to be present, in my opinion, Francisco, in brand messaging, again, with a very quick ability to capture attention.
Yes, I say this because, there's I don't have the data. I just say it because I'm a Latino. This sense of, especially first and second generation Latinos, they have this urge of we came here to be somebody, right? And we have certain time to do it. We need to develop whatever skills I have as a professional, as a student, or as a sports fan or a sports player, in order to succeed and to be, looking at people like you, that you are at the top of the list, and you are the role model, and they are like, let's do this. We were talking about the Stanford Latino Entrepreneur Initiative. I think Latinos, I don't know the number exact, but is the fastest growing entrepreneur industry in the United States also. And this is because they just want to make things happen now. They don't want to, they don't think that they have all the time in the world. And as a consumer, I don't know if they behave the same way as the normal, the mass market. So I don't know if you have any insights on that.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to grab some data on this. So here's something that's really interesting. First of all, you were talking earlier about, second generation, especially for second and first generation.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting, I think, because it's changed quite a bit. Country of origin identity actually increases for second and third generation Latinos. So when I talk about connection to culture, you would think, at least in the past, or certainly even, for my dad, and people didn't identify as much as being, Cubano or from, El Salvador or Mexico or whatever. They're just, people were really trying at earlier generations to just be part of American identity. Well, all that's changed. So, communities today, or young Latinos today, as I was saying, not only do they identify, but they identify more strongly. As an example, 28% of all Latinos identify by their country of origin first. So they don't say that they are Latino. They say, as you said, you said you're from Mexico. I said I'm Cubana. So 28%. And then, but for second generation, so you think, well, 28%, that's not that many. That's, maybe a third. But for second generation, it actually goes up to 34%, where, our second generation is saying, I identify as, from my country of origin. And third generation it was not even higher, but it's still remarkably high. It's higher than, it's right about equal with first generation, which is about 27% identifying with country of origin first. So it's almost like a boomerang effect, where Latinos are wanting, especially young Latinos, more than ever, to identify by their country of origin and have this identity beyond just Latino, but very specific. So, I think that's really interesting. What was the other question that you asked me, though?
No, it's the instant gratification. So we've seen that now the TikTok trend, as we were discussing that they want things to happen now. Do you see that, for example, Chipotle having more of this instant gratification than other brand that has not focus?
I think what we're seeing changing is also marketing methods, right? So people are using long form advertising or creative advertising is still there, and it will always have its place, certainly in programmatic and episodic content. But shorter forms. We talked about TikTok. We talk about Snap is doing some great things with brand integration. Of course, Instagram. There's less time to grab someone's attention and perhaps impact their consumption downstream. What I would say is I think a lot of these sort of shorter form attention grabbing media elements are really part of an overall cycle, right? So they're a touch point. I don't think they're specifically meant to change a piece of behavior, but they're part of building blocks of the model that ultimately will lead to, trying a product, a behavior change, something like that. Not entirely different from how we've always looked at those, attribution models, but interesting nonetheless. And I think they definitely have a place. And I think our youth are kind of used to this. They are, when I think about my kids and think about yours, Francisco, they respond a little differently to advertising than we would. A creative commercial that's interesting does grab their attention, and they will share it. But one that is sort of yesteryear is not going to get the same attention, that today's more modern advertising does. What I will say, the thing I do want to add though, is because Latinos are such a large portion of our youth, again, when you think about overall marketing, like, yes, overall Latinos are 20% of the population, but the youth component is so large. They make up such a large component of America's youth that you really need to change your brand advertising, your creative entirely for younger generations. It should look entirely different than older generations, not just because demographically they're different, but as we've been talking about sort of culturally, the responders, the things that are going to elicit a response look very different. Time and attention has changed. And of course, what is on trend and meaningful has changed too.
Yes, it's incredible how, and like you say, since the summer of 2020, things changed for sure a lot and fast. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the interview. Wanted to discuss with you, what is the key takeaway for the audience today? I mean, we've discussed a lot, and but from your experience, from your what do you want the audience to take away from this conversation?
Well, if you're a brand marketer and an advertiser, I would just remind you, which but thinking about this in terms of your strategy, most Latinos today fall into an especially valuable demographic for you, which is youth. 30% of children under 12 are Latino. And if you widen that lens a little bit, more than a half of Latinos are under the age of 34. That is your valuable consumer. And by the way, those numbers are almost inverse. It's for non-Hispanic whites. So where you used to look at sort of composite or a whole market, if you're looking at Latinos in particular, you have a half that are under the age of 34. The methods, the message is going to be entirely different. And if 30% of kids under 12 are Latino, you're thinking about growing your brand in the future, regardless of whether you're, on board with diverse marketing tactics or not. There's just really there's no other great way to do that without focusing not only on diverse communities, but specifically the largest cohort, which would be Latinos. So the big takeaway, I think, is to, while there are a lot of segments of diverse identities and diverse consumers that are capturing America's attention today as a result of 2020 and otherwise, right? We're now thinking about communities differently. We're thinking about Native American communities and Asian American communities and Black communities. Latino communities, specifically when you're thinking about growing your brand, have a unique value proposition. And I would argue that as you're looking at all the communities and all of your investments, that you ensure that you have a robust budget behind not just Latinos, but young Latinos. Don't let this cohort of people be forgotten amid your new advertising strategies that are increasingly growing diverse. Don't just take that tiny budget and move it around now between all these new communities you're targeting. Invest more. And of course, where my heart is, Francisco, invest more in reaching out to, connecting, and meeting Latino communities where they're at today. That's going to have the longest ROI for your company.
Yes, and that's a great insight. And I will compliment what you're saying is what we were talking about. Marketers out there, branding specialists out there, don't just park this part of your budget in somebody else's agenda. Make it as a cultural thing within your company, and always, if you're going to sit and negotiate in a room, be sure to have data behind you,
Be
because
deliberate about this. Absolutely.
if you don't have the data, it's going to be whoever has the bigger selling proposition, and you might lose. But with data is there, and that's it.
And so as a reminder, we just released our report in early September. It's available. It is Nielsen's latest Latino report on content and streamed content. Please make sure you have a look at it. And if you go to nielsen.com/Latinx, there are a whole host of free research and data reports about the Latino community. Anything and everything you could want to know. To Francisco's point, go there, nielsen.com/Latinx, and grab your free data.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is the part of the segment that I like very much, and I would like to ask you a very personal question.
Did I prepare for this, Francisco?
No, you did not, but
Okay.
that's what I like to do always. No, it's just a simple thing. You being a personality and being such an influence in the Latinos, I think that I would like to know, which snack brand do you consume?
Okay, snack brands. Well, we work with many of these clients, so I have to be a little bit careful. But I will
try not to go step in anybody's food.
I am a big fan of both major beverage brands. Well, there are many, but because they each have within them, which quite wise, flavors that are kind of reminiscent of when I think, I'm Cuban, so agua frescas is obviously more Mexican, but I live in LA, so I get to claim that also as my own. And I think of a couple of brands that have, how many of these brands have moved away, or not moved away, but have added to their, to their repertoire, things that feel more closely related to, cultural components are really important. One thing I'll tell you, my very, 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 very favorite is Materva, and that is on its own. So I don't have to worry about that. Materva is super, super bien. And then there's also, iron beer, which is something we drank growing up too, which is not really beer, but anyway, it's like a Malta.
Like a Malta, yes.
Materva is, I don't really know what flavor it is. I always feel like it's manzana, but I'm not exactly sure. We love that with tostones and frijoles negros and arroz. Always perfect. If you don't know what Materva is, you can look it up. It's like a gold can with red on the outside. I'm giving you brands that you're not going to know.
I know. No, that's good. That's the whole purpose of it, because interesting to know what is your, your trend, or what are you, not with the purpose of branding anybody or PR or whatever. It's just really what you consume, and
you also regularly have guayaba, and there are a couple of brands. The one that we like, Pastel de Guayaba, is Conchita. A little bit hard to find still. Goya makes a great
Goya. I try the Goya one. I love it.
I like Conchita. It's another one to try. It comes in a can. I don't like the ones wrapped in paper. I like it in a can with a little, queso and Cuban crackers. Super delicious. Let me see if I can give you one more brand. I gave you some beverage brands and snack brands. Well, I do have to give a shout out to both. I have to say Pepsi and Coke. I can't do one or the other. They both have snack brands that I really love. Super into all of the new flavors around chips that feels super, super authentic. Oh, tajin. I mean, I wish I had my purser. I would show you for the camera. Yeah. I have these little packets, I have these little tajin, like mini shakers that I carry with me in case I encounter mango. I'm ready to go. Also, not a Cuban thing. That's very, very Mexican. But again, I live in LA, and as I have told you, Latino culture is becoming mainstream American culture.
Yeah,
There you have it.
love it. I love it. And tajin, it just, keeps you wanting more fruit.
Oh my gosh. It's good on everything.
Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, they are from my hometown. The
Really?
founders of that company are from my hometown, and impressive entrepreneurs, and how they've grown their brand globally is just wow.
Well, so here's a quick example. And, I just, as I mentioned, I just moved my son into college. And when we were there, we went to a welcoming event for Latino students. And of course, we were there. And it was a really nice event. They had, all the different people from the university talking, and there was one sponsor there, and it was tajin. And they were there, with, there was 100 Latino or 150 Latino students and Latino families. And they had a little booth set up, and they gave us all, they had mango, and they had tajin on it, and they had hats. I have a hat, and they were there marketing their brand to who they knew would be the next generation of consumers. These kids are all going to college. They've all had this at home. How are they going to get it themselves? What is it even called? Where is it? Bueno, tajin, aquí estamos. And I thought that was brilliant marketing, because they were already there. Yes, they're branding early with this youth, but these kids love this. And now they know they have they were giving away bottles there. They have it in their dorm room, and they're ready to go. So kudos to tajin. Great work.
Yes, I agree. Well, thank you so much, Stacie. We have come to close our, like every good thing needs to end. It has to end today. So where can people reach out to you? How can they reach out to you?
I can be found on all of the social channels at Stacie de Armas. I don't know why my name is Stacie, but that's the first name I got. I answer to Stacie also, but it's Stacie de Armas, just like it sounds, on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and I'm fooling around a little bit with TikTok. So you can find me there too. Send me a direct message if you have a question. You can also find all of the work that we've done at Nielsen.com/Latinx. And thank you so much, Francisco, for the opportunity to share a little bit about me and my work.
No, thank you, Stacie. It was a pleasure having you on the show. Such a personality, and the great knowledge you bring behind everything that you talk about. It's just awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And we've been talking to Stacie de Armas, Senior Vice President, Diverse Insights and Initiatives at Nielsen. And if you don't want to miss out on the next big thing of what's happening in the now generation, do not lose the next episode of the Now Gen. Thank you for hearing us, and we'll be in touch soon. Muchas gracias.
Adiós.